Yeah, the problem with getting rescued or distracted from your academic career by the internet is then your grandmother is still like, when are you going to get your PhD? And she's still written 8 books, and I'm like, what do I need to do? I love this story about that there was a slab here for so long, because it reminds me of maybe one of my favorite quotes of all time from Jane Jacobs, who I've written about in just about all of my books. She has a great line about cities, which is that new ideas need old buildings. And the new ideas tend to go into these kind of abandoned spaces or empty spaces, and something about the freedom of those empty spaces allows interesting new connections and new uses to happen that weren't kind of planned, and that's a great driver of innovation historically, and you can tell it's going to be in this space as well. It is particularly moving for me to be here because, as Max said, this is the first time I've gone around talking a lot over the last couple of years about the idea of innovation spaces and environments, but this is the first relatively new environment that has in some part been inspired by my work. So it's very moving. Your books are kind of like your kids, right? You have all these plans for them, and then you got to set them off into the world, and they surprise you in all these ways. They have their own kind of life of their own that you don't always. Sometimes it disappoints you a little bit, but the best part about it is when these amazing things happen because in part of something that you wrote many years ago that someone took and expanded on greatly and turned into something like as magical as this space. So it's a real treat and an honor to be here, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about these issues and these themes in tomorrow's talk. But the thing that really struck me walking in here today and seeing it in person for the first time is another building and space that I wrote about and where good ideas come from, which is a building at MIT called Building 20. Building 20 was a building that was built around 1941, 1942, right as the war effort was kicking in, and MIT suddenly realized that they had all this research that they had to do to support the war, and they needed more space, and so they built this building in a matter of months. It was a temporary structure. It was designed specifically to be torn down as soon as the war was over, so it was expected to have 4 or 5 year lifespan. And design is really too strong a word for the building they put up. I mean, if you look at this thing, I wish I had a picture of it. It's most of you have probably seen the MIT campus. There are a lot of kind of neoclassical buildings with lovely Corinthian columns and things like that. And this thing was just a complete eyesore, but they had to put something up there. And it turned out that Building 20 ended up surviving and thriving for 50 years. The war ended, but people loved to be in this space. And it ended up basically surviving because the building itself kind of out-innovated the rest of the campus, the other buildings on the campus. And just an amazing series of kind of new ideas and breakthroughs came out of Building 20. It was everything from Digital Equipment Corp. and Bose Acoustics, Noam Chomsky's linguistics research, just an amazing number of innovators and companies and ideas and scientific breakthroughs have some part of their story connects with Building 20. And the question is why? What was it about this space that made it so magical? And in a wonderful book, which I encourage you all to read, called one of my favorite books of all time, called How Buildings Learn by Stuart Brand. He has a chapter about Building 20, and what he says about it is that basically the power of this building was precisely because it wasn't designed, and because there wasn't some advanced kind of plant ops or fancy architect that you had to consult if you wanted to change something in the building. And so the building had a tremendous amount of flexibility to it. So if you got on an interesting idea and suddenly your team staffed up, you could just tear down a wall. If you needed more space, you didn't have to call anybody. Nobody really cared about the wall. It wasn't part of the plan. As long as the building was going to hold up, it was okay to tear it down. Or you could you had some interesting new project and it needed drilling something into the ceiling. Well, go ahead. You could do that. You could push the boundaries whatever way you wanted. And so in a sense, the building was physically capable of adapting to the shape of the new ideas that were forming inside of it. And it was that flexibility and open-endedness that created this kind of magical incubator for new ideas. And I think that's where we are here, right? That this is a space that has been designed to have that kind of flexibility, to have that edge of chaos. There was a little chaos over there. We're trying to just be on the edge. I don't know if you got the memo about that. But to have that sense of surprise and serendipity and collisions coming from different departments, different silos, and people outside the university system coming in here and sharing ideas. Good ideas are networks of other ideas. Good ideas do not happen in isolation. And what this kind of space, like Building 20 before it, creates is an opportunity for those new networks to form and to surprise their creators in all sorts of ways, just as this space has surprised and delighted the creator of a book. So I think this is going to be an amazing space. And I did some rough calculations, and I figured Building 20 was designed to be temporary to last 5 years. This is not designed to be temporary. So I suspect statistically there should be about 500 years of innovation here. And I look forward to my descendants coming back and celebrating with you. So here's to life on the edge. Go ahead, guys.